Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today I'm going to talk about Rupert Murdoch and some statements that he made on Twitter. Statements that have generated a lot of controversy. On Twitter, he tweeted this. He said, Ben and Candy Carson, terrific. What about a real black president who can properly address the racial divide and much else? So, in response to that tweet, there's been a lot of news, a lot of press, a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about this issue. And I just want to point out a couple of things about this. First of all, here we have another example of a white person feeling that they have the privilege, they have the power, they have the right to define blackness for black people. Here you have a rich white man who feels so entitled, so justified, so empowered that he actually thinks that he has more authority on who is authentically black than black people actually do. And he's basically implying that President Obama is not black. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit further. But before I get to that, we really have to get to this whole question of self-determination. We can't allow outsiders to define who is black and who is not black. This is absurd. This is ridiculous. It is sickening that you have a white man that feels so entitled, so privileged that he gets to tell black people who's black and who's not. So I'm going to break down this statement that he made. First of all, he's implying that President Obama is not black. And I know that there are some black people who even endorse this idea. You know, some people that want to emphasize the fact that he's biracial, that he has a black father and a white mother. They want to emphasize the fact that he was raised by his white mother and his white grandparents. And they also emphasize the fact that his father was an African immigrant from Kenya and not an African American, not an African born in America. They want to emphasize all these things to question Obama's blackness, which is really silly. And I'm just going to explain why I think all that talk is silly. First of all, in this country, biracial people are considered to be African American, no matter how they identify themselves. If they say, well, I'm part white, or they say I'm white, or they try to define themselves in any other way other than black, in this society, the society will define them as black. When the police harass them and stop them and pull them over, society is telling that person, that biracial person, that he's just another nigga like the rest of us. And that's the way it's always been in this country. Biracial people are considered to be black. And we know this from the president's experience. The fact that he's biracial doesn't matter to these racist people out here. The people that depict him as a witch doctor. The people that depict him and his family as apes and monkeys. The people that want to depict him as a terrorist, as an Arab, as a Muslim. Those people don't care nothing about his white mother. They see a black man in that White House. And in this society, the social construct of blackness includes biracial people. And some people want to emphasize the fact that his father wasn't born in America, that his father was a Kenyan, as if that makes him any different from any other black person. We have to get out of this divisive thinking as a people. We need to have a Pan-African perspective as a people. We need to realize that Africans need to unite worldwide. We need to recognize that we are African people, regardless of where we landed after we were kidnapped by the slave master. Some of us remained on the continent. Some of us were shipped to South America. Some of us were shipped to the Caribbean. Some of us were shipped to America and Europe and other places. But the fact of the matter is, no matter where we were dropped off, we had a common origin, and that origin was Africa. As long as African people remain divided by geography, by differences, we will continue to be a conquered people. So we have to get out of this false idea that because his father is a Kenyan, that somehow he's different from the rest of us. When the police shot Amadou Diallo in New York, they didn't make those distinctions. They didn't say, wait a minute, he's an African, so we won't treat him like we treat these American so-called Negroes. They didn't make that distinction. They just opened fire on the brother, shooting him over a dozen times, shooting at him over 41 times. They didn't make that distinction. The police in New York didn't make that distinction when they shoved that plunger up Abner Louima's rectum. They didn't make that distinction. They didn't say, oh, he's a Haitian. Let me not treat him harshly like I treat these African Americans. We have to have a Pan-African perspective like Marcus Garvey encouraged us to have as a people, and quit dividing ourselves. We got to quit dividing ourselves on our complexions. And this whole division between so-called biracial people and African Americans is silly. It weakens us as a people. There is strength in numbers. And in this society, regardless of how you define yourself as an individual, this society will define you as black. So Obama is black. In fact, you can argue that he's more African than Africans in America because his family is directly descended from Kenya. So this notion of people questioning the president's blackness based on the fact that he's biracial is silly, especially coming from a white man. I would rather have somebody that's quote unquote biracial in office who pushes for important issues that are relevant to African American people than I would have somebody that's a quote unquote traditional African American, somebody who's a descendant of slaves, if that person has policies that are diametrically opposed to the interests of my people. And that kind of person is Ben Carson. Here's a man who benefited from all kinds of social programs like Pell Grants, like affirmative action, like welfare, all those social programs, and this man wants to get rid of those programs. Much like how someone crosses over a bridge and they want to destroy the bridge so others can't come across as well. And I'm going to emphasize one other point that Rupert Murdoch made in that tweet. He talked about someone who can address the racial divide. That's code word for someone who really won't speak out on issues dealing with race. See, they love black people that tap dance. They love black people that don't have the balls to speak out on issues that really matter. They love these passive, soft, weak black men that don't have a set of balls. They love those kind of black men. And that's why they love him. He's soft-spoken. That's why they love Ben Carson. He's soft-spoken. He doesn't speak out on black issues. In fact, instead of condemning police brutality, this Uncle Ruckus wants to condemn the people who speak out against police brutality. He wants to call them bullies. He wants to talk about how you shouldn't emphasize black people. You should be more general and emphasize everybody. That's their idea of someone who's bridging the racial divide. Somebody that wants to placate these racist people. someone that doesn't have the courage to speak out. This man has nothing to say about these brutal police, but he has so much to say about those who had the courage to speak out against them. This man had the audacity to say this. He said, before Obama, people barely noticed skin color. That goes back 150 years. Blacks were happy and grateful for what they were given. Back 150 years. This is Rupert Murdoch's idea of somebody that can help end the racial divide. A delusional black man who thinks that Obama created this racial division in the country. He said going back 150 years. The racial division in this country was created when they brought us over here in slave ships, when they deprived us of our humanity, when they oppressed us and stripped us of our cultural identity. That's when the racial divide began. It didn't begin with Obama. And even after slavery, there was a racial divide when black people were forced to be second-class citizens, deprived of the basic right to eat where they want, to sleep where they want, to be where they want, to go to schools that they want to go to ride on the bus in any seat that they want to sit in, to even drink out of water fountain, to be able to vote. These basic rights were deprived of African Americans in this country. And this fool has the nerve to say that people barely noticed skin color before Obama. The police been killing black people. And this man wants to pretend like people barely noticed skin color before Obama. This is Rupert Murdoch's idea of someone who will heal the racial divide in this country. And this is no surprise. This is coming from the man who owns Fox News, a network dedicated to attacking black people, a network dedicated to race baiting against black people, a network dedicated to parading out these tap dancing, bootlicking puppets, house Negroes, to serve as mouthpieces for racism and white supremacy. So this comes as no surprise. Well, those are my thoughts. I welcome your comments, your feedback. Please rate and subscribe. Peace.